We spend so much time coaching parents on how to support their child's behavior. But here's a question we don't ask often enough. How are the parents doing? Because if we ignore parent stress, if we ignore burnout, even the best ABA plan will struggle to succeed. And here's something I've learned the hard way. Parent training can either reduce stress or unintentionally add to it. And when that happens, when parents feel like they're failing or when they're too depleted to follow through, even everyone loses. That's why this video matters so much. We're going to look at how to help parents stay engaged, build resilience, and model the very skills we're working so hard to teach their children through what I think of as coaching for sustainable parenting. Now, let's zoom out for a second. Think about this. How often do we approach parent training like a checklist of skills that we need to teach? Reinforcement? Check. Prompting? Check. Replacement behaviors? Check. Functional communication training? Also check. All of that is critical. Of course it is. But here's the shift that changed my practice. If a parent is burned out, they're stressed beyond capacity, or they're running on fumes, they won't be able to consistently implement what we teach, no matter how clear we make it. So, coaching parenting skills isn't enough. We need to coach the system that supports those skills. And that means helping parents build sustainability, not just competence. And here's the part that's a little uncomfortable to say out loud. Poorly designed parent training can actually make things worse. When we add pressure without addressing parent stress, we risk increasing burnout. And when parents can't follow through, not because they don't care, but because they're depleted, they often feel ashamed. The cycle of stress and guilt spirals from there. I saw this happen firsthand early in my career. I was working with a single mother of two very high needs kids. Both of her kids engaged in dangerous behaviors. One dislocated her knee during a tantrum. The other damaged the floor from constant jumping. They both required 24/7 supervision. Their mother was doing everything she possibly could and more. But when I came in, I focused on what I'd been taught. Teach the ABA strategies. I walked her through ABCs of behavior, function-based interventions, replacement behaviors, and yet month after month, nothing changed at home. Eventually, I asked her why she wasn't using the interventions we'd spent so much time on. And she said it very honestly, I don't see how any of this is going to help us. That moment stopped me cold. I realized I'd been focused on teaching what I thought mattered, that I hadn't really understood what she needed or what was realistic in her life. I hadn't built a partnership, and I certainly hadn't addressed her stress. That experience changed everything for me. But before we talk about what to do differently, we need to understand the world we're walking into when we coach parents. Because if we don't understand that, we can't coach sustainably. Many of the families we serve are carrying invisible loads of stress. And I'm not just talking about typical life busyness. I'm talking about chronic, layered stress that erodes even the most resilient caregivers. So think about what many parents are juggling: caregiving around the clock, often without reliable respite, social isolation because their child's needs make community participation difficult, and even grief about what they imagine life would look like when they first had a child. And there's more. There's financial strain, navigating the service systems, fighting insurance battles, attending school meetings, all while carrying the unrelenting worry about their child's future. Now, imagine stepping into that world and saying, here's one more thing you need to do: implement this ABA treatment plan. Even with the best intentions, that can land as just one more overwhelming demand on parents. And here's the behavioral dynamic we often miss. When parents are overwhelmed, their ability to engage in effortful behaviors, like using new strategies, goes way down. High stress acts as an EO, making avoidance more reinforcing and engagement less likely to happen. If we don't address this dynamic, even the best treatment plan will sit on a shelf, not because parents don't care, but because they're human. And right now, they're carrying too much. And here's the part I wish someone had taught me earlier. The way we frame parent training in those early conversations can either create buy-in or build resistance. I'll share how I approach that in just a minute. So, if that's the reality parents are living, how do we help? Here's where I think we, as behavior analysts, need a mindset shift. Traditional parent training tends to focus almost exclusively on teaching skills. But if we want parents to actually use those skills consistently, we need to coach for capacity. Parent sustainability isn't a bonus outcome, it's foundational. If we ignore it, we make it harder for parents to stay engaged and harder for the child to succeed. When we coach the whole parent, not just their parenting skills, we create the conditions where everything else we teach can stick. And here's the challenge. Our training as BCBAs often works against us here. Most of us were taught how to write treatment plans, analyze data, and implement programs. Very few of us were taught how to build collaborative relationships with parents or how to coach resilience. The Taylor et al. 2019 study found that one of the lowest rated skills for behavior analysts was their ability to compromise with parents. That's a really big problem because if we're not flexible, if we push too hard or too fast, we risk damaging trust. And trust is the currency that makes parent training possible. And there's another barrier, and that's our language. Even when we think we're simplifying, technical jargon creeps in. And when parents feel confused or intimidated by our language, they disengage. And there's also what looks like resistance, but it's often just exhaustion. Parents who are burned out aren't resisting us. They're protecting what little energy they have left. And the behavioral principles apply here too. If reinforcers for using a strategy aren't immediate, certain, and positive, and the punishers for trying it are immediate and strong, parents will avoid the behavior, just like any of us would. And we should be thinking about the picnic analysis when considering why behaviors are occurring or not occurring as we hope. Finally, our own sense of urgency can backfire. If we push too hard for fast implementation, we risk increasing parent stress, which undermines the very outcomes that we're trying to achieve. So if the usual approach isn't working, what does? There's one mindset shift and one practical tool I now rely on almost in every parent training session. And so let me show you what that is. First, the mindset shift is instead of seeing parent training as lessons to deliver, see it as a relationship to build. That starts with partnership, not with pressure. When I begin coaching a parent now, I focus first on building trust and understanding their world. I want to know what matters to them, what they value, what they're struggling with right now. I often use the ACT matrix to help parents clarify their goals and values and to help me see where they're stuck. One simple question that I love to ask is, if we're successful together, what will life look for you in 6 months from now? The answers tell you everything. I also practice constant perspective taking, putting myself in the parent's shoes and asking, what would this feel like if I were living it? That guides every decision I make about pacing, expectations, and language. Next, I assess parent stress and skills because if we aren't monitoring stress, we can't claim to be reducing it. I use the parent stress scale or PSI to track stress over time, and simple fidelity checklists to track which skills parents are actually using in real life. That way, we're not just teaching, we're measuring what matters. When we do start teaching, I focus on micro actions, not overwhelming programs. For example, helping parents practice a 2-minute pause when they feel reactive, or letting go of perfection in one area, or celebrating one small win they might have otherwise missed. I also model act-based language in my own coaching. If a parent says, I just can't do this, I might say something like, you're having the thought that you can't do this, and that makes so much sense. This is really hard. Just that small shift helps them step back from the thought instead of getting stuck in it. I help them reconnect to values in hard moments. I might ask something like, what kind of parent do you want to be in this moment, even if it's a little bit messy? And I normalize struggle constantly. We focus on progress, not perfection, for both the child and the parent. And finally, I monitor and I adjust my strategies over time. And I remind parents and myself that slow progress is sustainable progress. And here's something almost no one is teaching, but it makes a massive difference. The way we frame early wins can completely shift how parents see themselves. I'm going to share my favorite way to do this as we wrap up. For me, this shift didn't happen overnight. I spent years thinking that if I just taught the right strategies, things would improve. And sometimes they did, but often they didn't. It wasn't until I truly understood that mother's experience when she said, I don't see how this will help us, that I realized unless I was coaching for capacity, I wasn't coaching sustainably. When I shifted my focus, when I stopped treating parent resilience as optional and made it central to my coaching, the outcomes changed. Parents stayed engaged longer. They used more strategies consistently, and they felt better about themselves and about their relationship with their child. Now I see coaching sustainable parenting not as an add-on to all of the other trainings that I want to do, but as one of the most impactful things we can do for the families that we serve, especially at the beginning of services. If there's one thing I hope you take away from this video, it's this: parent sustainability isn't optional. It's foundational to what we should be doing with parents. When we coach the whole parent, when we build partnership, monitor stress, model resilience, and celebrate small wins, we create the conditions where everything else we teach can actually work. And when parents feel supported and empowered, they show up differently for their child. They model emotional resilience. They create a more stable, nurturing home, and the whole family moves forward. So as you reflect on your own parent coaching, ask yourself, am I teaching skills or am I building sustainable parenting? Because when you do both, that's what the real impact, where the real impact happens. Of course, it's one thing to understand these concepts. It's another to apply them consistently, especially when time is limited. That's why in the next video, we'll go one step further. I'll show you how to help turn key ABA strategies into sustainable habits so they can use them not just in session, but in the moments that matter most at home. And if you want a complete framework to coach this way, the Achieve Parent Training System gives you everything you need. It's designed to make your coaching more effective and more compassionate, and to help families build the resilience they need to thrive. You'll find the link in the description if you want to explore it. Thank you for doing this work and for helping families move beyond compliance to real connection and resilience. I'll see you in the next video.